Yes. No. Yes. Bill. Are you going to say really good, nasty stories about Bill? Everyone just slide over Gerald and out.
Magnificent Seven.
Oh, Gerald and
face
Peter
on
finally?
Yeah, there you go. No, I almost punched out Gerald.
Do a silver, a Sergio Leone.
40 bucks or something she owes for it?
All right, here we go.
Okay, change the subject, Peter.
Okay. Please.
Okay, I'm positive. Yes.
What do people think about when they wait for their picture to be taken?
Think about Gorbachev on the bridge.
Gorby.
Gorby on the bridge.
Think about get it done.
Bill, we invited him. Here.
You invited who?
Gorby,
Gorby,
come here
sure.
and speak.
You know, there's a Gobi imitator came to the office today.
Yeah.
He had that thing in his head also.
So easy.
I just took, I love it.
Stencil. And they took him to Trump and Trump came down and
My friend dressed that he respected.
Double, yeah.
That's
Great.
okay. Is that enough?
One more. Almost.
Yes?
You always gotta get one more.
Any help
He's
for
a
us?
photographer. It's part of
There
the,
we go.
it's in the DNA code.
Part of the gig.
Okay,
It's in the DNA code.
there you go. Bob, did you
That's
hear about
Peter right here.
your
Bill.
impersonator?
Guys.
I don't know.
Okay.
There you go.
Cheese.
And two more and we're done. One.
Whole roll, I love it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
you.
No, no.
Oh, no, no. No, no. Gentlemen. Ladies. Bill, come on over here. Having lunch.
Yeah, sure. Come on, Jay, take a picture of me and Andrew. Come on, against the wall. Against the wall.
Bill, it's the end of the music. You know what that means? Showtime. Hello, everybody. Good to see you here for the Bay Area Music Alliance 25th anniversary. We're going to make Bill work on his anniversary. Actually, the anniversary, I don't think, Bill, is really until August. November. Everybody has a different month, so I just suggest we keep celebrating it every month. Yeah? I want to thank a few people before we get started, certainly Sasapa Records and this hotel. Lance, you did it. Thanks very much. Just keep the water glasses full. And before we get too far into this, I want you to meet the board of Bay Area Music Alliance. And we've been known for the last 13 years as Bay Area Women in Music. We're still the same. Girls, come around here and say hello. If you have any questions tonight about the organization or Bill, just ask us. Come on, ladies.
I'm Denise Denay, and I'm the Vice President of the Board of Directors.
Yep. Hoo, hoo, hoo.
Hi, I'm Terry Dans. I'm Chairman of the Board at BAMA. Welcome, everybody.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Prudenti. I'm Director of Print Media. I'm also a Sasapa Record Company.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Johnston. I'm on the advisory board focusing on pay equity.
Hi, I'm Barbara Padilla, and I'm a board assistant.
Hi, I'm Donna Franklin, and I'm a board assistant.
I'm Renee Russian. I'm the Marin County Committee head.
I'm Gretchen Horton, and I do PR.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Cross. I'm the business manager and the chief financial officer.
Hello, my name is Tambray Bryant, and I'm secretary of BAMA.
Good night. My name is Vic Saravia, and I'm Director of Computer Communications.
Hi, I'm Sari Marks. I'm advisor to the board.
I think that's it. I think that's it. If you have any questions about the organization, see one of those ladies later on. There's one thing we're going to get involved with later on here. It's going to be July the 21st, and it's Studio Tech 90. Beverly Summerfield with NARIS is with us. She'll tell us just a little bit about it. Beverly Summerfield with NARIS.
Thank you. I'm also on the advisory board.
And she's also on the advisory
BAM.
board, of course.
On July 21st, NARIS, AGFA, and Mix Magazine and Audio Images are presenting an all-day recording technology event at the Golden Gateway Holiday Inn, Studio Tech 90 it's called, and there's a long list of really great people who are speaking. There's demonstrations and seminars, and it's only $8 in advance, $10 at the door. I need volunteers, and anybody that wants to come, just send me a check, and I have information at the back of the room later. Thank you.
See her and sign up if you're interested in volunteering for this. I knew that if I started to introduce Bill Graham, I'd probably cry. So I called in 4 great guys to keep me from doing that. And we're going to start with Peter Albin, original member, as you know, of Big Brother and the Holding Company, and now with the Dinosaurs, and still Big Brother and the Holding Company with a great new vocalist. And then we're going to go to Marty Ballin, founder, original member of the Jefferson Airplane. And I don't see any fish here. That'd be Barry Melton.
I think he went to the ball game.
Whoa. Well, if that be the case, we'll go on to Mr. Bob Weir. You know who that is, Mr. Grateful Dead. So without further ado, I just want to say thanks for coming to this celebration. Let's hear what Peter has to say about years of Bill Graham.
Thank you very much for coming, everybody. We're just supposed to tell some funny stories and some reminiscences tonight. The funny stories that I know about Bill, I generally don't like to tell them. They're either off color or they blow his cover. So what I wanted to talk about a little bit before introducing Marty and let him tell the funny stories is some more serious aspects. In the beginning of the San Francisco rock and roll scene, a lot of us were poor, to say the least. We were using very poor equipment, and as a matter of fact, I'm still using state-of-the-art equipment from 1968. But anyway, back then we really didn't have a lot of equipment or help. Everything was just on a shoestring. And maybe even with the producers who were around at that time, besides Bill, Chet Helms and some of the Ramallah people and the early producers, people who worked at the various colleges. Not much money. But some that did were very generous, and I think it was part and parcel of the scene at that time. It was very much community-oriented. And I know that Bill's going to speak about the state of the music business today, and probably particularly in this area. Even though I'm still working, I don't know exactly how it has expanded. I know it has. But then it was very small. And everybody in all the bands knew each other, and the band members personally knew all the producers, and in this case, Bill. So on our first job with Bill. Now, we had worked at the Fillmore with Chet Helms for the Family Dog Tribal Stomp, which was one of the first gigs that we worked with the Jefferson Airplane, as a matter of fact. But the first official job that we worked with Bill at the Fillmore, we really had very poor equipment. And it was like someone who is really part of the community coming out and being, you know, extremely helpful to their brother. This sounds maybe a little bit corny, but Bill co-signed for our equipment that we got from Music City. We couldn't afford it, so if we had defaulted, you know, he would have been on our case, and we don't want to get Bill on our case, so we didn't default. But through his generosity, that's just one little story. We got started and got better equipment. It was terrible Standell equipment, but anyway, we went on from there. Another longer story, but just to show Bill's generosity. I guess it was a summer of love. Everybody was expecting a lot of people to come in. It was 1967. Coming into the Haight-Ashbury area. There were a lot of free concerts planned, and I think it was Mark Bronstein from the Psychedelic Shop who did a lot of this planning for this, for that summer's events in the park. Said, don't tell anybody, you know, because I asked him, I said, where are you getting all this stuff? Where are you getting the generator? He says, well, don't tell anybody, but Bill Graham was donating all of this stuff, you know. So, I'm going to discover again, but anyway, it's through people in the scene at that time, not only Bill, but other musicians, that I think it prospered and developed, and I hope that type of spirit has continued. I think it has in the scene that I'm still involved in. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Marty, who's got probably some funnier stories to tell. It's Marty Ballin from Jefferson Airplane.
Thank you. Good evening. I was thinking about Bill coming over here and last night what I would say, and I know everybody here has probably been touched by Bill. And I was watching Gorbachev on the TV, and I was thinking, you know, it's special people like Gorbachev or Bill Graham. You don't have something like what happened here in San Francisco happen. You have to have, of all the stars and all the music that's happening, you have to have somebody who's so in love with that music and so enthusiastic about it. And Bill is one of those rare, special people, which the Arabs call, he's a man who possesses baraka, divine destiny, you know? He's like a sheik. But a long time ago, I first saw Bill was way back in the early 60s. I was a dancer in some Guys and Dolls show, just in the chorus line. And they had this open early stages, and Bill came in. He was playing the part of Big Julie in Guys and Dolls. He's got one line. He's got one line in the whole play. I think he's on for about, 3 seconds in this play. We've been rehearsing, everybody's got a much bigger part. He comes in, this guy, very powerful presence. Hey, he looks like a Big Julie kind of guy. So the little director is talking, and Bill, she tells him what to do, and Bill says, look, well, I think I ought to do it like this, So, she says, no, do it like this, and Bill's telling her how he thinks it should be done. It's one line, in this whole play. This goes on for like 15 minutes, and they're arguing, and they're fighting, and they're talking back and forth, and finally she kicks him out before he even goes through the scene, They got in such a fight, So years later go by, and we're at the mime troupe, and we're rehearsing there, and he's in there, he's managing the mime troupe, and I went in and I said, hey, I remember you and Big Julie, and he said, yeah, what are you doing? And we talked, and he was doing the Mime Troupe show, which we went on and played with him, and I must say, all the times we've ever played together, one thing I've always been amazed at Bill Graham, of all the other people I've ever worked for on their stages, is you walk onto a stage for Bill, and everything is quiet, and everybody's just kind of standing there, and they're just like looking at you, like, chew us, take it, it's all ready, And it's so nice. You don't find that anywhere else. You know, it's a beautiful feeling for an artist. Years went by and, you know, the scene started, and I'm sure everybody has something to say about their time with Bill. Things I remember was he was the airplane's manager for a while. I remember one time we got a call from Colonel Parker, Elvis's manager, asked if we wanted to come over and visit him at MGM. So nobody in the band wanted to go, but I said, geez, I'd like to go. You know, I'd like to see Colonel Parker, man. He's great. So Bill wanted to go, and Bill Thompson wanted to go. So the three of us went over there, and we sat with Colonel Parker, and we walked into this giant, you know, studio building where they do movies, and thousands of lights above it and everything, and there were pictures of Elvis all over, and there were hundreds of people working in here, and Elvis was on the floors, Elvis was everywhere, and this guy came out, this beautiful man, in a golf sweater and a, you know, Bing Crosby hat and his cane, and he was limping a little, and it was Colonel Parker, and he showed us around, he talked to us, and told us all these great stories about Hank Snow and people he had worked with, and he just thought that what Bill was doing was, you know, really going to happen in the world, and he wanted to tell Bill that you meet the same people going up that you meet coming down, and that was his whole point of the story. And we sat there all afternoon listening to him talk about these people, and he sat behind this big desk, and he had this elephant feet on the desk, and he had this large leather chair behind the desk with a gold $sign sewn into the back of it. We sat there like three, you know, young guys going, wow, man, listen to all these great stories about Colonel Parker and how, you know, he had a trained dog that would come out and shit on the stage. When Hank Snow was too drunk to go on, you know, which would crack everybody up, and they'd clean it up, you know, and they'd try to sober Hank Snow up, you know. And he had pictures all over the walls, from the ceiling to the floor, from everybody, from Gandhi, from Jesus, you know, to the Colonel, from... Years later, when I was on RCA, I learned that the Colonel signed every picture in that place, you know? But long time went by, and we did a lot of great shows. One of the funniest times was at the Hollywood Bowl one time. We went out, and I came out, and, you know, in those days we were kind of drugged out, and there was about 200 yards to the audience, and so I walked out, and we had all these mechanical toys walking and lighting up and walking across the stage, and set pieces we had rented from studio prop houses, and I went out and I said, you know, you guys are so far away. I was like the last guy in the row there, you know, and I said, come on up here and dance, you know. So that was the thing. I used to say, you know, come on up and dance, and everybody come up and dance. It dawned on me one time, you know, that, hey, there's 10 cops here. There's 10,000 of us. How can they, you know, stop anybody, you know? So the place would explode, you know, and they all came up on the stage, and they're dancing wildly around. And Graham freaks out, you know, and he comes over, and the cops are freaking out on him, and he's freaking out on me, and I don't know what he's doing, you know, and I'm saying, what are you doing? He's going, you fucking idiot! You fucking nuts! You know, and he's screaming at me, and I'm on acid, and I'm going, what, you know, when Graham's, you know, attacking somebody, it's a great thing, you know, it's like, wow, man. But when a great white shark is eating you, it's like, whoa, dude, lay off, I gotta do a show here, you know. So he comes over, he goes, I told you there was a moat under that stage. All those people could fall in it and die, and the cops were on his case, you know, so. I said, Bill, you didn't tell me that. He says, I told you that. I said, well, I didn't hear you, you know, so. So he never liked me after that, you know. I really ruined it for him, so. We did a lot of fun things. We traveled around. The greatest thing, I think, in the world for any artist is to know Bill Graham personally and work with him, because some of the most beautiful moments are like flying through the skies in a jet plane, listening to Bill tell his stories, because when he writes his biography, he'll have the best book anybody ever put out. I mean, this man, he was an actor to begin with in New York City when he came out here. One time the Mill Valley Film Festival did a tribute to him and asked me to go around and interview people and talk to people, and I learned a lot of things about Bill I didn't know. He was born in Berlin, right next to the Reichstag. And when Hitler came to power, his mother sent him to America. He was 9 years old. And he came here by himself, went to an orphanage, and I met his friend from the orphanage when they were kids. And I met all these people that Bill had always taken care of, and you know, he's done all these great things for people. But while I was doing that, I found out, you know, like there was a little black school in Oakland. They needed a school bus, you know. And Bill bought him a bus, you know. And you don't hear about these things, you know. There's a lady in Mill Valley who lives right next door to me, and she has this big house, and she takes care of all these women's kids, you know, and 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning come, and they bring their little children, you know, up to about 3, 4, 5, I guess, and she takes care of all these kids. Well, the city wanted to get her out of there. The landlord wanted her out, and she was really worried. She came next door and talked to me, you know, she'd come over and talk to me a lot. And she was really worried, you know, asking me if I could help her. And I was looking around, going to help her, and before I knew it, Bill had helped her out. He had taken care of paying off her, the house and keeping her there, and she's been there ever since. And she's just the most beautiful lady, and it's like the things he does, you know, when he goes around and touches people like that, you know. He's a great soul, you know. And without a great soul, you don't have a scene, you don't have a tribe, you don't have people, you don't have a civilization, you know. Right. You don't have, like Gorbachev, you know, I mean, what he does, you know, he affects you because he believes in something and he's going for something, and he does it, he delivers, you know. That's the greatest thing about Bill, he delivers, you know. And I just want to take this time to thank him. And to say I think that Bill Graham is probably one of the most fascinating people I've ever met in my whole life, and I met some very interesting people. But of all the stars I've ever met, the biggest star in all the heavens I've ever met and been with is Bill Graham, I'll tell you.
Well, I'm going to try not to cry, too. I guess you all don't know, because Bill keeps quiet about some of his accomplishments. He was a war hero. I guess, like I say, most of you don't know that. He was on a troop transport going to Korea during the war, and he kept our boys alive because he worked in the kitchen, and he used to make sandwiches all day, and then sort of put them away. And late at night, they had this gigantic crap game going, and he never indulged in the gambling, but he kept our boys fed with sandwiches. Of course, he charged for them, and he turned a tidy profit. He would also cash checks, and he would keep the change. You know, anything after the decimal on the check, he would pocket. You told me this. It was late. I could regale you all with a couple of stories. Like, for instance, well, we got started in the city in the Fillmore Auditorium. Actually, shortly before that, we played the Trips Festival in Longshoremen's Hall, and Bill was the stage manager, and he was running around with a clipboard. And, you know, who's that asshole with the clipboard? You know, because he was trying to get everything running on time, and that just wasn't the nature of what was going on there. And a couple months later, we were playing at the old Fillmore Auditorium, and one of the pranksters, a friend of mine, Ken Baz, was walking up the stairs. And Bill was prowling the top of the stairs, as was his wont. And he pinned, they had a sort of a confrontation or some kind of fracas at the Trips Festival. Anyway, Bill pinned Ken walking up the stairs, and he goes, "Trips Festival, Trips Festival." And so, of course, Ken saw him doing that and went, "Asshole, asshole." Needless to say, Ken didn't enjoy that evening that much. There was another time I came around the corner. I went to see the Byrds, same place, and and I came around the corner and I saw something that I've seen before, sort of firsthand. Bill pacing up and down, back and forth in front of the building, and I knew something was big time wrong, and so I slid up to him as quietly as I could. "Anything wrong, Bill?" And he was raving something about that so-and-so McGuinn was late to the show. And having been on the wrong side of this conversation, I excused myself as quickly as I could. And right after that, around the corner came Jim McGuinn. And Bill was wearing his pork pie hat at the time. He actually threw it, he took it off, threw it down, and stomped on it. I swear I saw this. It's all true. I could go on at length about the good stuff he's done, about the quality of our relationship and how he's taught us, and we hope to think, we the Grateful Dead hope to think that we've taught him a bit about quality in the presentation of musical events and just stuff in general. And I could tell you about the good times we had riding under the full moon, charging across the desert under the shadow of the pyramids and stuff like that. But basically, I think to illustrate all these points best, we would just best listen to Bill.
Thank you. So I could forget everything I've thought about saying this evening and just spend the night refuting all the things these guys said. Although there's one clarification, this whole scene that Marty mentioned about that theater piece and that one line I had. The lady, the director of, was a lady named Irma Kay. And the whole scene starts as she gives me this holster with a gun in it. And the gun was too big for the holster, and I'm supposed to pull it and say, "I'm here to shoot crap," some silly thing like that. But the gun wouldn't release, and I said, "Give me either a different holster or a different gun." And after 50 minutes of haranguing with her, she said, "Well, you either take it or leave it." And I just couldn't leave it at that, and I said, "I think you ought to take this gun and shove it up your ass." And then she fired me, and that's really what happened. The last month, the last 6 weeks have been very trying for me and for the company, and I want to be honest about this with you, and then I'll feel better about telling you why I'm not as prepared as I should be and try to speak to you as much as I can from my heart. On Wednesday, this Wednesday, there's going to be a press conference here in San Francisco, at which time we will discuss and announce the arrival of Nelson Mandela to the United States. The reason it's important to me, because that's all I've thought about in the last 6 weeks. Mr. Harry Belafonte, who's a dear friend from the civil rights days way, way back. Well, let me make it clear so that maybe, and it doesn't have that much to do with what's happened these last 25 years, but it has so much to do with why we're still here doing what we're doing after 25 years. In 1953, I was a waiter at Grossinger's in the Catskills. And I was living with a young lady named Ruth, and we had a bungalow down the hill from the hotel. And it was her birthday, and part of my job in the dining room was to serve the celebrities that were entertaining at the hotel each night. And it would be my job to serve them before the dining room opened. And that particular night, Mr. Belafonte was the guest entertainer. And during the meal, I said, "Excuse me, I don't really know you, and I know this might be an imposition, but it's my girlfriend's birthday, and all of us are getting together afterwards down the hill. And if it's at all possible, would you come down and say hello and perhaps sing a song or two?" It was a long shot. And he said, "Thank you, I'll think about it," and I told him where we were, and I'd forgotten about it. Then during the course of the night, one of the guests at my table, it was her birthday, and there was a policy in the hotel that if anybody had a birthday, the hotel will give you a free cake. And I said, "Oh my God, a cake, Ruth's birthday, wonderful." And the people at the table were so rank, not nice. And they told me to put the cake away in the freezer, that they'll eat it the next day, they'll have it for coffee time, whatever. I decided to take this cake and smudged it around, made the cake Happy Birthday Ruth instead of Diane. We took the cake down to our bungalow, and about midnight, there was a knock on the door, and there was Harry Belafonte with his 3 backup musicians, and he sang all night long for our birthday party. And that was the beginning of my relationship with Harry. And then years later, we started getting into some civil rights work, and the friendship has lasted all these years. So a few weeks ago, he asked me to meet him in Washington, D.C., and there was a grand meeting of the African National Congress, and they had the itinerary there, and Harry asked me if I would be involved with the finale. Mr. Mandela was scheduled to come to the United States for 10 days, June 20 to June 30, starting with a ticker tape in New York, going to Grace Mansion, down to the coal miners in West Virginia, then up to Boston, the auto workers in Detroit, on to Chicago, to end with a 2-day visit to Washington, D.C. with the president, then finally a 2-day stay to end the tour in Los Angeles, ending with some glitzy affair. And at intermission, at the middle of the day, I spoke with Harry and asked him for permission to speak to the Central Committee and about the possibility of changing that ending that I felt very strongly, as we all do, about what the Bay Area stands for, that it is the home of the free speech movement, it is the home of the birth of the labor movement, and Harry Bridges in the Bay Area, and that recognition should be given to those factors, and take a good look at what Los Angeles is also. And in addition to that, I felt very strongly that what we should try to forego and not do again is to bastardize Mr. Mandela's release from prison and take a good look at what really happened when he came to London for the big concert in Wembley Stadium. It was 98% white. They charged $37.50, and it was just another pop concert, and he was lost. And this should not happen here. And I told them that we would be involved, and we put the whole company to it, but it must be roots music, the music that emanated from Africa and it's extended into gospel and jazz and blues and R&B, and extend that to that grand finale. So we're jumping the gun here, but the reason my mind has been this preoccupied, and I've been back and forth commuting 2 to 3 times a week to either New York or Washington, is that on Wednesday morning, we will announce the details of Mr. Mandela's visit to the United States. And not only will we've added a thing in New York City at Yankee Stadium to welcome him to America, and then at the end of the tour, we will have this grand finale here in the Bay Area, and we will get into the details Wednesday morning. About 5 years ago, I received in the mail an invitation to go to a junior high school reunion. And it was for 50 years, the graduates from 1945 to 1985. All the graduates from all those years were welcomed to this big event in Hempstead, Long Island, for this grand reunion of 50 years for junior high school 82. And I thought it would be fun. I hadn't seen these people, obviously, in 45 years, 50 years. And I decided to go. And when I got out there, the tables had, you know, the table number was 45, 46, 47. And I finally got to my year, which was 47. And sure enough, these guys got up. Billy, and, you know, my name at that time was Billy Grajonka. I was born Volodya Grajonka, and I changed it because people made fun of my name, so I changed it to a silly name like Bill Graham. And these guys started saying, "Hello, Billy, how are you?" And I saw Arnie Ratner and Jerry Sontag and these names of guys that I grew up with in the neighborhood. And finally, this one guy, I just get a slap on my back, and I turn on to this short guy with a beard and glasses, this scrunched up prune face. He says, remember me? And I didn't remember the guy, and he grabbed me by the shoulders, and he shook me. He says, remember Melvin? Melvin Rabbits? Melvin Rabbits? And I looked at Melvin, I said, no, I don't remember. And he started saying, 2A, 3A. And this is where I went to, this neighborhood, when I came to America. And he kept on pointing, 2A, 3A. And it finally dawned on him, you're Melvin, you lived in 2A, and I lived in 3A. Of course, Melvin. And he said, do you know how long I know you? Do you know how long I know you? I said, yes, 45 years. He said, no, do you know how long I know you? I just looked at him. He took me by the shoulder and shook me, and he said, when I met you, you couldn't speak English. Now, you may not believe this. I had totally forgotten for all those years that I never spoke English until I was 11 years old. And you lose sight of your origins because you become totally ensconced in your society. And Melvin was responsible for me not only learning the English language, because 2 months after I came to this country, the war broke out between America and Germany. And to the kids in the neighborhood, it wasn't important. It didn't matter that I was a Russian Jew who was lucky enough to get here. To them, I spoke German, you're a Nazi, you're a bum. And I used to have these insane fights going to school every day. And Melvin was the guy who said, schmuck, learn the language, lose the accent. And Melvin would sit with me and take the newspapers, and I would write out the headlines, and he'd tell me the meanings of the words. But he was the guy who said, if you're not going to lose the accent, they're still going to know you're a foreigner, because most people who emigrate with their families continue to talk like their parents. You know, how's the ball, please? They all talk like that. And you have to get out of that. And he was the guy who made me go through that, ring, roll. And finally, within 6 months, I learned to speak like a New Yorker, and everything was okay. And so Melvin was very important. And I spent that night reminiscing those early years. And had that not happened, I don't know if I would have ever thought that deeply about, my God, where did I really come from? And look at the extent of my good fortune, or all of your good fortunes. You know, when you just miss that car at the intersection, you go, phew. Well, I had a big one like that because I could have stayed over there and my life would have been totally different, and I wouldn't have been fortunate to have landed here. Up to present time. Last night, we were very fortunate that our organization received an award for whatever we've done through the years. I got dressed at my house, my 2 kids put on their tuxedos, I put on mine, and we're driving across the bridge, and I said, Jesus, isn't this amazing that here I am with my 2 kids, top down, sunny afternoon, and there's a car that passes our car, honking. I've lived in the area for a long time, and for the last 25 years been in the music business. And over those years, a lot of people just say hello or honk. I don't know them, but they know me, going to concerts, or we've threw them out of the building somewhere, some argument, or something good. And I have a habit of just saying, hello. I just raise my hand. Well, this time that car kept on honking. That was next to us. And I kept on going. And we got to the middle of the bridge, and this car just persisted. And I finally said, well, I better take a good look, you know. And it was my 2 sisters, who, one lives in Mill Valley, the other one lives in Los Angeles, and she had come up to be with him to come to the same dinner last night. And they were with my niece, 2 sisters, and the brother-in-laws. And there were us 3, those 5. And there, but for the fickle finger of fate, who were we? One of my sisters spent the war years in Shanghai, having escaped from Germany. My sister Esther spent the most horrific 4 years in a concentration camp. They eventually came here through Israel and lived very wholesome lives. And it was a twist of fate that got us all here. I was living in New York. We ended up, they had friends here. They came here. After I finished school, I came to visit with them here. Fell in love with the Bay Area. Got involved with the meme troupe. We got arrested in the park for using foul language. We needed to raise some money. We had gotten to meet people like Marty, people like the Warlocks who became the Grateful Dead, and people like Big Brother and the Fish and all these other groups. And the handwriting was on the wall for me. Within a very short period of time, I became aware of something that was so simple to see. The rest was just the execution. Freedom of expression is the almighty hold for me, that we have the right to express ourselves, and when you extend that opportunity, you're dealing with power. Raw, awesome power. The rock and roll world in the 60s became aware of that. The artists in the city gradually became aware that at any given time they could raise $100, $1,000, $5,000, buy a bus, save a radio station, send a youth symphony to Europe, start a legal organization for the oppressed. That had never existed before. On an ongoing basis, that had never existed before, and it might never exist again. And it has continued to be that. In 1985, Live Aid affected the world, and most people in the media were amazed at what the awesome power of rock and roll was, the extent of it. They were 20 years late. It had been going on all through these years in the Bay Area on a regular basis. But because it hit the media, that's when they started to pay attention. For us to have come along in 1965, frustrated actor, never having succeeded at wanting to be a character actor, having the opportunity to decide what the environment of a space is. The audience comes to see the artist on the stage. We set the tables. We put down the cutlery. We put the flowers on the table. We do something to the walls. We're the setting. And we're responsible to think about how you should be treated once we rip your ticket. What happens to you? Are the bathrooms clean? Is the food decent? Do we hire people that will respect you and don't treat you like they're goons and you should be oppressed? It's an awesome, awesome amount of work. I would say that 80% of all the great moments that I've enjoyed in this work took place at events where money was not exchanged. A different spirit comes to the event. a different camaraderie. We want to be entertained, but we're there for other reasons. We didn't invent benefits here. We didn't invent dancers. And I just don't know how many of you are aware that what goes on here in this area doesn't go on anywhere. It's a very, very special place. You are all part of something very special. I think it's because you, as a unit, retain the only thing that we have in our unit across the board, what we look for in new personnel in our company. It is more prevalent in the Bay Area than anywhere in the world that I know of. You have common sense. Most of us in the Bay Area are fully aware of how good we have it here. And when we come to places of public assemblage, we conduct ourselves with common sense, self-respect, respect for the others, dignity. If you come to mess around, we'll straighten you out. We'll try to tell you that there are certain things that you can't do. And there are times where we've had problems and altercations. That's the way it is. The work, though, the work through all these years, and you hear a lot, and I became fully aware a long, long time ago that people could look at people like me and say, what a lucky guy. You're right. He makes a lot of money. You're right. What do you do with that? What do you do with making it? Whatever making it is in our society. Making it usually means that guy makes a lot of money. A few years ago, somebody asked me, what does it mean to you? What is making it? Are you wealthy? I said, well, within the society's knowledge of wealth, I would think so. I would be considered wealthy. Well, what is wealth to you? Planes and cars and jewels? And I thought about it and I said, something happened to me a couple of years ago, and that was it. That was my level of making it. There's a place in New York City, 56th, excuse me, 56th and 7th Avenue, called the Carnegie Deli. When I lived in the Bronx when I was a kid, when my mom would let me go, the big thrill was to just walk into Manhattan. Manhattan was then, still is. It's the battery charger. And I started going into the Carnegie, and whenever I could, I'd get down and have a bologna sandwich. Many, many years passed, and just kept going, then opened the Fillmore. Went there quite often. But I was fascinated by the fact that when you walk in there, all through those years, you sit down, there's a paper napkin with a knife and fork and a spoon by each setting. And you finish eating, then the next one's put down. Paper napkin, knife, fork, spoon. But every once in a while I'd be sitting at a table and somebody would be sit down, well-dressed, or there was a relationship somehow that those people had with a waiter or the head waiter, and within 30 seconds, the waiter would go over to that guy and give him a linen napkin. That never happened to me. Many years go by. So 4 years ago, we went to New York, I was in New York City, down in the old neighborhood that I lived in Sheridan Square. And at the newsstand, they were selling these glass pipes, crack, freebasing pipes. But the reason it got me crazy is because on the side of the glass pipe it said, I heart New York. I love New York, on a glass pipe. Ugh! Went bananas. I got a hold of some Latin friends of mine, some rap friends. We staged a couple of rap shows in New York, raised a lot of money, made some video films, sent them to the high schools. The press conference for it, I asked the owner of the Carnegie Deli, would you let me have the press conference for this anti-crack rally He said, yes. So he shut the restaurant down one morning at 9 in the morning for 2 hours. That was it. 2 days later, I go back into the restaurant. How, you did good. Sit down. I sat down. I'm eating. He comes over and gives me a linen. Whether you believe it or not, for a person that is very fortunate to have a very nice home, and 2 cars, and 2 dogs, and 2 sons, and lives very well. I go to New York now. In fact, we were there a couple of years ago, and the Garcia band was playing in a theater there, and afterwards we go over to the Carnegie. I said, Jerry, you want to see something? You know who you are? You're nothing. I went to the restaurant, I said, let's sit down at this table with all paper napkins and see what happens. And of course, the guy came over and whips out these half a dozen linen napkins, and Jerry was very impressed. And I try to do that as often as possible now, because it lets people know that in that restaurant, I'm a somebody. And it's always been my high of making it. The guys, Peter and Marty and Bob, mentioned things we've been involved with through the years. Through these artists, through these friends, through these musicians, and many others in the Bay Area, I'll tell you a lesson that I learned. 65, 66, 67. And it's probably the biggest turning point of my life relative to the way I think. You grow up in New York City, and especially sort of, you know, I had a good foster family, but wherever I stood pretty much alone. I always felt very independent and didn't want to listen to anybody. When you grow up in New York, you realize that when you meet somebody for the first time, you instinctively distrust them until you have grounds to trust them. And people like these guys and many others in the mid-60s taught me here in Northern California, this die-hard, hard-ass New Yorker, that it's possible to trust people upon first meeting until you have grounds to distrust them. That's very true. And that for me, it's served me in good stead. I've made my mistakes a few times, you know. I fell for the wrong thing. But in the long run, it's worked very well for me. And it was these individuals who utilized their power and taught me about how to do that. And it got to a point in '67, 2 years after we started, we took on a very simple policy. Any cause that came across my desk, on the phone, in writing, in person, if somebody had a cause that we felt worthy, that we deemed worthy of support, we would automatically say to that person, you're on, we will give you what we have, providing you go out and contact the talent. Now, through the years, it's become more and more difficult because, tragically, there are so many worthwhile causes. Just, you look at the newspapers and you see the causes. And the rock and roll artist has become the symbol of success. If I could get Bruce Springsteen to be on that stage, I can raise $1 million. Correct. If I can get the Grateful Dead to play at that place, I can raise $500,000. Correct. So it's very difficult now because the good causes are competing with other good causes for the services of these artists. But the artists in the Bay Area and our organization and other organizations have had this strong realization of what that power is all about. That's why you can add up all the worthwhile causes that have been supported in the Bay Area by these artists' performances, and you take all of the benefits in all of the other cities, in the entire rest of the country, in the last 25 years, and they don't match what has gone on in this community for the last 25 years. That's pretty amazing. Common sense, the utilization of the power that we all have. Our company consists of about 300 people, and the umbilical cord is just that. If you look at the roster and if you look at the hierarchy in the company, you find that the guys heads of production, head of security, advertising, started changing light bulbs, sweeping floors, breaking into the Fillmore, and have stayed through the years. So I don't know of anybody here who's been as lucky as I've been, and with what's gone on here. I go a lot by posters. I see Marty's face. Oh, poster 13, poster 28, poster 67. I see the faces, and because we always did posters in those weeks. And I remember August 12th, 13, the blue and purple poster where the Grateful Dead and the Airplane played together. And halfway through the night, Mrs. Baez and the daughters Joan and Mimi came in, and you started doing dancing in the streets, and I sort of pushed them both on the stage. And there was an insane scene with Pigpen dancing with Pigpen dancing with Joan Baez. These are the same artists who early on taught me who their heroes were. I had no idea what rock and roll was all about. I came out of the Latin scene. I'm a big Latin music fan. But it was these musicians who told me about Muddy Waters and the Staple Singers and Miles Davis and Wayne Cochran, and, people I'd never heard of. And not only that, they allowed us to put these artists on these programs. The Airplane and Big Brother or the Dead and the others could have said no. We're going to have local guy friends of ours. And I said, well, Jesus, I would love to try now that I'm buying these records and I'm listening to these artists. And we were able to put on the Preservation Hall Jazz Band for New Orleans with the Grateful Dead, Or we put on Miles Davis. I remember this one because Miles Davis with the Grateful Dead, and how they first started turning away, and then Miles got into some Concerto d'Arangues, Sketches of Spain, and they were the Deadheads. Ooh. Just got in. And the first of those two nights, standing by the steps, because I always wanted to get people's reaction when they left, how they felt about the show. And these two dipsy doodle guys, tie-dye shirts, went past me and the staff and one said, hey, good night, man, a great show. And he looks to the other guy and says, hey, man, you hip to Miles, man? And when he walked in, he had no idea who Miles was. And this total conversion into acknowledging this great artist. And through the years, we would put Woody Herman and the Herd on, or, I'd like to take a moment on my favorite. I have a favorite rock and roll story. When the Cream came to the United States, first time, Ginger Baker introduced the most dangerous thing that ever happened to rock and roll, the double bass drums. And of course, within a short period of time, every fucking yo-yo, boom, 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 boom. And there was one particular drummer, he's a wonderful guy, who just went too far. It was the drummer for Leo Lyons, was his name, 10 years after. And, no, Rick Lee was his, I'm sorry. The other guy was the bass player, Rick Lee. And he was a wonderful guy, but the worst 20-minute drum solo in the history of man. So I went to, I did think this out maniacally, and I went to Las Vegas, and I asked to be introduced to Buddy Rich. And I met Buddy Rich And I asked Mr. Rich to be on this rock and roll program, that there would be an opening act. He would go on second, and they'd be fucking rock and roll kid. He hated rock and roll music because they made much more money than he did, and he played much better drums than most rock and roll drummers. He finally accepted. We paid him more than he usually made. He said, come on to the Fillmore. It was the Carousel. And it was the opening act, Buddy Rich, and 10 Years After. And just before he went on stage, I went into the dressing room and I said, Buddy, you know, far be it for me to tell you what to do, but could I look at your songbook? And he, thick book, and he was putting on his cardigan jackets and the Hawaiian lace shirts, you know, the bandstands, and 17-piece orchestra. And I looked at the song list and I found a song that the young people that I thought were there would be familiar with. It was Norwegian Woods. And he comes out and I said, the man, would you welcome please Buddy Rich and his orchestra? And in those days, whenever we put on an act that the people didn't know, but they just came to see the headliner, or they say things like, Alvin, we want Alvin, Alvin. So he said, okay, I'll play it. I said, would you consider doing that as the opening number? Fine. And the kid's just mulling around, not really paying attention. And the minute I introduced him, the brass section stood up and just went, you know, da 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 da, and the whole room just went, holy shit! Because this guy's sitting there with a little drum kit, and of course he's Buddy Rich. For the next hour, he mesmerized this. I mean, blew them away because he's Buddy Rich. And in fact, he went off, and the kids wouldn't let him alone. I went in the dressing room, and they had this reputation. He doesn't do encores. So I go in there, and I said, Buddy, I said, no, fuck you. So there's only one thing left to do. I picked him up and carried him on the stage. And he did this encore. He did an encore. And left. Then we're sitting up for 10 years after. Now you gotta realize, there were maybe 3 months in between when I first thought about this until it happened. For 3 months, every day, I practiced this one line. So now, we're finished, and I go into the dressing room, and Rick is on his rubber board, rubber pad. And I knew, because he always went like this. And I went over to him, put my hand on his shoulder, and said, hi, Rick. Hey, man, can't wait for your solo tonight, baby. And that was the end of 10 years solos in San Francisco. Nasty story. Obviously, there were many. Someone recently asked, give us the highlight. What's the highlight? There's one that's ongoing, but as far as performance is concerned, 1967. The best then, the best now, there'll never be another Otis Redding, the greatest performer I ever saw. It was so great that every band in the Bay Area wanted to be on that show, and the Grateful Dead opened, and Janis was there every night. Country Joe opened another night, and musicians came early in the evening to get a good spot in front of the stage, and the man was extraordinary. The other one is the ongoing, most powerful experience that I'm very privileged to have every year. This coming New Year's will be the 25th New Year's, except for one year. The 25th year we were spending with the Grateful Dead on New Year's Eve. And every year we go a little gaga and we do a production, so the coming in of the new year. And that one time every year, you get up in the silly outfit, just this Father Time and hair covered up, and usually flying in on something. But no, when that happens is the one time a year for that minute that I have some conception of what guys like Marty and Peter and Bob experience. We don't experience that. The pure, not just hit single, pure adulation. When these artists walk on the stage, the people in the audience really saying, hey, we really care about you. It's not your last number 3 with a bullet. It's you guys. Well, once a year, I sneak in there and fly over the audience, and these hands come up, and everybody's positive, everybody's on Pluto. But it's something like, and you get 15,000 faces like that, and the energy is so genuine and so positive. It gives me an insight to what they must work at all the time so as never to disrespect it. Because every night for them has to be opening night. And every night they must not forget the extent to which you went to get your ticket. And we're very lucky in the Bay Area because we have musicians who do remember that. So, I apologize for not being more prepared and saying all the things that I was supposed to say. I can tell you that I try hard not to lose sight of one particular aspect of my life. What is it that you don't have to do, but you do it? What is it that you can do about the things you could bitch about and do something? We are very fortunate. We have a very powerful tool. We, I think, are capable of producing events involving public assemblage. And in this era, that's a very powerful tool. If we didn't take advantage of that tool, we would just make a lot of money. And while I respect the dollars that I earn, and I respect the fact that all of you work hard to earn your dollars, it's not enough. And when you become as fortunate as I have become to be among the high earners in our industry, in our society, what do you do with making it? What do you do with that power? What do you do that you don't have to do? But you do it. I have to believe that most of you, if you were in my position, you wouldn't abuse that power either. And it is the utilization of that power that is really the crowning joy of what it is that we do for a living. Are we supposed to have questions, Sheila? Yeah? Why?
Do you have any advice for really offbeat acts that don't quite fit into either heavy metal or punk rock or new, different stuff? People have a hard time finding a venue, like acts that are so unique and yet are accessible, stuff that, because a lot of really good artists that I find, anytime they can get in front of the crowd, people love them, but for some reason, the promoters don't pick up, or somebody doesn't pick up.
It's a good point, good question. In the early years, when it was just us and the artists, and we communicated directly, not through the managers, through the agents, we'd fill that bill. Today, 9 times out of 10, The agent and the manager decide who the other act is. You want Rod Stewart, you take chopped liver. You want pickled herring, you take... It comes as a package. When you see Fleetwood Mac at Shoreline or Madonna with techno, whatever that thing was. I didn't put techno on the show. And what happens is, Madonna might be signed to an agent, CAA. The agent has other acts that they want Madonna to consider to put out as an opener. Her manager may be managing another act, or they exchange. They're managing 3 or 4 acts. You put one of my acts on your with your act. I'll put one on. It's all business now. It's all politics. Promoters, other than the Grateful Dead, that allow us to make suggestions with their approval. Santana will put on odd things or good music things. It's all biz. So acts like the one you're talking about have no shot unless you have a direct contact with an agent or an act or a manager. It's not. We've lost that. We've lost the ability, the power. I've said this before, and it's a very simple way to look at it. People look at me sometimes and say, God, he runs Northern California. He's got a monopoly in Northern California. Anybody can rent almost any facility. If you want to build an amphitheater and spend $20 million, Gag is going to hate. But build an amphitheater. See what happens. The act is the end power. The act makes the final decision. And if it doesn't, then they should fire their manager. Manager, who guides the artist's career. Agent, who helps the manager to decide where the act plays. Promoter, 4th on the pole. 4th on the totem pole. Audience. Act, manager, agent, promoter, public. I have ideas, I gotta go through these 2 guys. Very difficult to get to this guy, except when they're local. Yes, ma'am.
You have managed so well to balance your idealism with the business, the music business, politics, diplomacy. Do you feel that you can teach this to other promoters in the world to be more like yourself?
Don't tell that to the other promoters. I'll tell you, it's hard to answer that question because many times I've met with, I've been with other promoters. We are one of the fortunate groups, companies, that we manage acts, so we get to be at other facilities when we manage these acts, and they very seldom leave their areas. The thing that I've never understood about promoters, and I don't mean to speak out of turn, I don't mean to be derogatory towards them. Some of them are very, very good at what they do, but they all miss the boat in one sense. This power we talked about, the power to affect positive change, to be an influential part and parcel of what goes on in your community.
Can I ask you
One second. Middle of the thought. 1 second. There are 15 or 20 major promoters around the United States. Each and every one of those promoters makes 6 figures a year. Many make high 6 figures. A few of us are fortunate to make 7 figures a year. But here's the real power. It's not that money. Take our case here in Northern California. Talk about power and how to use the power and the challenge of that power. We are involved with ripping up roughly 2 million tickets a year. Therefore, we come in contact with 2 million people a year, up there with the A's, the 49ers, and the Giants. And if anybody says to me, do you think your company has anything to do with the environment in Northern California as it relates to the youth? Yeah. It might be positive or negative. That's for you to decide. But what I know is that we rip 2 million tickets a year. And I talked to other promoters, and I talked to them about, why do you hire goons? Why do you hire the wrestling team? Or why don't you hire women who are very bright? We have 38%, 40% of our security staff are women, because 95% of the problems have nothing to do with physicalness. When it's a physical problem, we got guys. But it doesn't have to be that way unless you need it, and it's there. So I'll tell you, I've never really understood why the other promoters don't realize the extent of their power. And the only thing I can surmise is that they're too busy keeping the engine well tuned. But all the car does is go straight. It just doesn't do anything.
What is your opinions on record labeling? What is the chances of having a kind of benefit concert to seminar in order to fight record labeling? Censorship, as in like
obviously, like most people who believe in freedom of speech, I don't believe in censorship. However, and I must stress, most of us don't believe in censorship. 90% or more of the questionable stuff that seems to be the problem with some of the people who look for censorship is shit. It's just garbage. It's just drivel. There are so many bands, so many musicians earning their living today. I'm sorry. There was a great classic line about a promoter, a manager of a very famous group. The group won't go nameless, but they became extremely famous. This guy was asked to look at this group. They were looking for management. He goes into this basement in New York, and he sees the group. And they said, "Tell us straight, what do you think?" And the guy said, "All right, let's establish one fact. You are void of talent." They said, "All right, now what?" And he proceeded to make a career for them. They became very famous, very successful. They were a gimmick, but they couldn't play. And you have many, many groups out there, many. I look at that. I'm sorry to say there's a guy out of business now. The group is not together. I was out of town 3 or 4 years ago, came back and they said, "Oh my God, that band is playing at the Civic." It was D. Snyder, D. Snyder? Twisted Sister, right? Now, I'm a fairly flexible human being. And I park the car outside, I get into the outer lobby of the Civic, and I hear something that I didn't think I was hearing. Then I open the double door to go inside, and for the next 30 seconds, I watched this guy, microphone in hand, going like this. And the report was going back, and this was the report. Fuck, 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 fuck. The guy was making $58,000. Fuck, fuck. Now, if somebody says, "Do you think we should have censorship?" No. Do I think we throw that shit off the record stands? Yeah, it's garbage. But we have the right to put anything on the boards. Do I think, oh, there should be freedom of expression? Yeah. Do I want my son to be able to push a button at the age of 5 and see a guy eating a woman on television? No. But where do you draw the line? And it's not that foremost on my mind to exude a lot of my energy so 90% of all the shit that goes out there gets the right to be put out there. Let somebody else make that fight. I'm not against it. But there's so little quality to defend, but it should be defended. I just don't want to do it. There are a lot of other things worth saving more than that.
it doesn't seem like anybody's really doing anything about it. What I wish there's some way in the Bay Area that we could do something about this fight our right of freedom of free speech for the First Amendment, because I feel we are losing it very much. And they were talking about lyrics being censored as opposed to saying rules and what can be allowed in lyrics and what cannot be. What do you think? Do you plan on doing anything like some kind of promotional thing like what's happened in the St. Louis, no more record labeling? I'd love to see that because I really feel we're losing it, at least in the battle. I'm in radio and I'm also an art, just a minor artist, okay? And I feel we're really losing it. And it's like, what's the future going to lie for us if we're going to lose all of this? You know?
Well, a simple answer for you would be, you find the acts. We can take our organization and do the event. What I don't know is what will you do with this money? Here's $30,000, and then what are you going to do? Too many times we've done benefits, and by the time they finish buying the typewriter and renting out that little room, there's nothing left, and it becomes defunct, and another benefit went. But in answer to your question, is it valid to mount a campaign to combat censorship? Yes. You get the artists, we'll be glad to produce the affair for you. We'd like to have some idea of what you're going to do with the money.
My question is completely different. I'm a business owner, I have a video service, and I'm trying to create a package where I can get to the underground clubs and have videos of the local bands on this video. So in between bands, you can have this video of what's going on in town locally. To create a package for a club owner to want to use me. I mean, I'm nobody, I have no money to back out, I don't have the big video wall, but I know concept, I know what I want for the band's videos, and just to create a package for this club owner. Do you have any suggestions on what I can do for them to listen to me? You know, to realize that it's actually, it's much more enjoyable to be at a club between sets, to have videos going on and just keep the energy going.
Here's the problem, though. Your desire is to support and be creative in your support of the new local scene. The owner's intention is his own survival, and what he will do is whatever he can to promote his club. And it's more impressive for him that in between acts he shows videos of more popular artists, because yours are your taste, and the problem with the love of the newborn or the stillborn, the love of the undiscovered. Perhaps 1 out of 1,000 people who aspire to be performing artists eventually stay in it and make it. All those hundreds of thousands of garage bands and musicians don't make it. Whether they're not lucky, they weren't in the right place at the right time, whatever the reasons are. And what you're saying is, you are coming from a good place and you want to help all of them. If the majority of them don't have what it takes, why should that club owner support your intent, since it's not going to be productive for him? You're going to have an uphill battle, because it's more than likely, if one of all the artists you video makes it, that's a lot. And he has a different survival course for himself than you have for yourself. Sorry about that.
You tell Steve Payne I'll be giving him another call.
Okay.
When will the boudoir reopen?
This will sound rather corny, and I hope it's taken in the right content. When the earthquake took place, I had friends living down in Watsonville, and I noticed that the media just covered the marina, and there was a tragedy in the marina and Cypress Avenue. But my friend told me that, you know, not only his house, but the whole downtown area disappeared. Took a helicopter down there, and sure enough, downtown Watsonville was gone. We decided to hold these benefits, and we decided to put up a substantial sum of money so that we can get other people to challenge what we put up, match what we put up. It was either doing that or fixing the Fillmore. The Fillmore has a cost of around $850,000. And we already know that there is no way we could ever recoup that because there is not that kind of profit money in that. And we are very nostalgic slobs in our company, but I don't know how nostalgic we are. So it remains to be seen. Right now, we are getting out from under the earthquake and the shows right after that. We canceled 13 shows. We lost 2 buildings, and it had a tremendous negative financial impact on our company, very large. It's more than likely that we're not going to be able to do that, even though I wish. There was a time last year that I had this thought of, because there was that fire to which was the synagogue next to the Fillmore, that could have, between the Fillmore and the building next to it, we could have done the Rock Museum right next door and continue with the Fillmore. And it was a nice idea, but the earthquake messed things up. I don't know.
I'll show up for the benefit.
Can you imagine if Bill Graham asked to do a benefit to save the Fillmore? You know what these guys would say to me? Come on. No.
I come across a lot of bands that are still convinced, and maybe rightfully so, that the only place for them to really make it is in Southern California. The myth is that they've got a better chance of making it, down there than up here. And the stigma has always been, if you want to be creative, you stay in the Bay Area, but if you really want to ink that deal, you go to Southern California. Is there any possible way of dispelling that myth, other than that this is a place where bands do get signed regularly, and they have just as good a chance of getting it up here than going down to LA?
I think that you'd have a better chance down there simply because the studio heads are there and in New York, and they commute between the two. If the word on your band is that strong, I'm sure they would come up here. There are only 3 or 4 really working music attorneys in the Bay Area, and a couple of hundred down there. They've seen the advent of video revolutionized our industry, and Los Angeles has become the dominant capital for discovery. Yeah. I've always thought, including myself, a way of describing San Francisco, and I don't mean to disrespect anybody, because there are many great stars that do live here. I get the feeling, and I have even before I got into music, that San Francisco is comprised to a great extent of professional rejects from throughout the country. that we wanted to be actors and dancers and writers, and we couldn't make it wherever we were, and I said, but at least let's cry in a beautiful spot on this planet. And I meet more, I could have been people here than anywhere. Ballet dancers and singers. It's true. Sir, how are you? Welcome to the Fillmore.
Yeah, back to the Fillmore. I realize, my understanding is that you don't own the building.
Never have.
The wonderful courts own the building, and that you just have the master lease.
No, I have no lease.
My question is, the Fillmore is the rock and roll museum. I mean, and it was happening even before you or anybody else here made the scene. We had people come up to us from the neighborhood telling us about how they heard Billie Holiday perform there, and it seems like, well, people might not want to do a benefit for BGP. That a third party, like a not-for-profit foundation of preservation, cultural preservation, they would be able to preserve that space so it continue to be what it is. And,
if that were to take place, hypothetically.
So my question is, what can we do? What can we do in the?
Well, I would say I would simplify it for you. If for some reason, this is going to get me into trouble with the guys who run the company. It's as if it was state-owned. But in a sense, if some other city proclaimed, let's fix the Fillmore up and let's continue with the shows. If they were to do that, I would be willing to operate it and let all the net profits go back into the city. But they would have to agree with that. And knowing the situation in the city, I doubt they would do that. But I don't want to disrespect anybody's feelings for the Fillmore. Excuse me just one second. I'll tell you, in 1967, someone said something in my presence that was the highest compliment our company ever got. And it was early on, and when we first got into the business, we didn't know what we were doing, and people would say, people would just come in there and enjoy themselves, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, the guys that have been security guards there for years would blow their whistle. So 1 week later, I would say, don't blow your whistles. And then a couple of weeks later, I would say, God, you know, we got these bed sheets on the wall, and let's just put some nice flowers and birds on the walls and play some easygoing music so that people, you know, just cut off that music, because it wasn't just dope. It was people just feeling good and moving about, dancing and swaying. And let's let them ease out. And let's put some apples in the lobby, and let's put some corkboard on the walls, and put some news articles of the day and photography displays and artwork. And within a couple of years, it got to be a pretty good place to come to. We had a show there with The Cream, the Butterfield Blues Band, and Charlie Musselwhite. $2.50. 2 shows a night, 2 sets a night. And I'd open the front doors, and I had to go and take a leak. Go to the restroom, and there were 3 urinals there, and I'm standing in the middle urinal. 2 guys come in, 1 on each side. You know how guys are. And the 3 of us are standing there. This guy says, holy shit, man, who's playing here tonight? And this guy says, I don't know, man, but what's the difference? It's the Fillmore. There will never be another compliment like that, because that's the space that we worked on very hard to create. And we've tried to carry that on, even though Shoreline is bigger, and Sacramento is bigger, and the Greek Theater is bigger, and the business is bigger. You try to extend that feeling, and you try to keep it pure and keep the puree good, and don't add water to the puree. Have a smaller portion, but keep it good. And I'm fully aware of what the Fillmore means to me and means to a lot of other people. But I can't, we have an obligation to doing the things that we need to do in the company.
Wondering how aware you are of the gross exploitation of musicians, local musicians, that are happening in the Bay Area right now regarding the pay-to-play situation. And what your opinion is on how to solve this problem, if you have any comments on that.
I wasn't really aware of the extent of it. I knew that was happening in LA. I'd read some articles about it happening in LA. I'll tell you what happened to us a few years ago.
Yeah.
The
Still $1,000 for the tickets for you to play.
Yeah, really. It's getting quite out of hand. Bands are paying $300 to $1,500 to play, and if they don't come up with that money, their equipment is being confiscated. And to revert back to the LA question,
the problem we had is that there was a fire at Wolfgang's. Then we were thinking of building another place, and instead of doing that, I decided to reopen the Fillmore. And then the Fillmore got caught in the earthquake. The hang-up we have, and then it's really started in '85, all this madness with the fire, the office, then Wolfgang's, then the Fillmore. So it's been brain warped to some extent for me. But what that has entailed is, for the first time in all these years, we lost the relationship with the underbelly of San Francisco. I've always wanted to know what was going on, what was going down. I still go to clubs whenever I can, We have a lot of other young people in the company who go out there, but we're not involved right now because we don't have Wolfgangs, we don't have a Fillmore, and we need to get back into that. I don't appreciate pay for play, but I can understand what the promoter will use as his defense and say, well, you know, I've got to pay my overhead, man, and unless you bring in, you can't lose sight of something. An unknown band wants to go into a place and get exposure, but if you don't draw people, how is he supposed to pay for his overhead, and how can he pay you? Now, what should happen is the standard thing in the industry. The headliner in a club is the draw, and this act is the support, and hopefully these people who came to see the headliner will come to see you and appreciate your work. What should you get paid? $100? $200? What should that be? Pardon?
What you're worth, a percentage of the door.
But you can't ask somebody as they come in, before we let you in, which of the acts are you coming in to see? You can't get a
obvious. I've been a club manager and band manager for 12 years, and I've seen both sides, and I still cannot understand where the club owners are coming from on that issue, because it's pure unadulterated greed, and it's just it's getting farther than the kids taking money out of their pocket. What is going to happen is the A&R people from the record companies are going to stop paying attention to the Bay Area for talent, because anybody that can afford to will be headlining.
I'll tell you, I think that's an extremely valid point, and I'm not saying a benefit is a solution. I'm not saying that we have the solution, but I mean this. I really think it's worthwhile for us to discuss, and it's not that we haven't the clout, but we might be able to give you some guidance and advice on how to deal with these club owners. When Mandela is over, you give me a call, and I guarantee that we'll sit down with you, okay?
Thank you very much.
I suppose my question was very similar to this one, in that I come from the South Bay, where there are about 2 clubs where original bands perform, and I guess I was wondering, why is this? Or
Your problem is maybe 10,000 years old. You are an artist. You wish to express yourself through the arts. You are no different than the playwright who wants to see his play performed, the classical cellist who wants to play a cello in front of an audience, and you are competing for that small space of light. And you can say it's the club owners, not enough clubs, not enough of an audience, too difficult to get started. That's the plight of the artist through time infinite. And if there are only 2 clubs, it means it's very difficult to make it in a club. Let me tell you something about rock and roll promoters, rock and roll owners in general. The most unique thing of all about the rock and roll industry from day one that I've discovered is that anybody can get into it and make a lot of money. You don't need a college education. It's helpful. My education does nothing for me in this business. And thank God there were other guys who were much brighter than I am in our company who can deal with the legal sides, the controlling side, the tax sides. Very few people would believe this unless they know our company. I have not been involved in a financial meeting of any kind since 1969. I know I make much more than I spend, thank God. I don't care about that. I know we do well. I can fly business. I don't fly first because it makes no sense. You fly business, get a wide seat. The reason our business has the idiosyncrasies that it does. That while it invites many honorable people, it also invites the sleaze of the universe. Do you know why? I can't think of any business where legally you can make this much money. You might become a land developer. You need some education, wheeling and dealing, finagling. Here you can manage a guy who has a hit single or a hit album, or you open up a place in the right location. But then you also have the other guy. I always thought that a big Uncle Sam hovered over Woodstock and said, "Woohoo, big business." And other guys saw it too. And people got into our business. And some of them say, "You want to play my place? You got to pay me." It's very difficult to stay clean. Very, very hard. 90% of us, one way or the other, beat up Uncle Sam pretty bad. And the reason for that is most of us lead with what we learned in the street, the good and the bad. I can stand up here and tell you that I have a piece of paper from the City College of New York, but I can push that aside, and if you say, well, what's your document? What's the real document? The document is 6 years of driving a cab in New York City, 12 years of waiting on tables in the Catskills. That's the ticket. And you learn more about waiting on tables and driving people from one place to the other for this business than you could any other way. I'm not saying you can't be from Montana and succeed. I am saying, I don't think you can be from Montana and succeed. So when you say that there are 2 clubs in the South Bay, ask yourself why. If the club business was a success, wouldn't there be lots of clubs in the South Bay? It's not that easy because all of these undeveloped acts, unproven acts, want to be seen. And the club says, Susie Cream Cheese. Why should anybody walk in there? It says Susie Cream Cheese. Sam Rabinowitz, Charlie Klutz, whatever the names are. What would be the reason for going in there? Every time I take out an ad in the newspaper, I do the same thing. I said, I imagine that I'm the audience, and they go, they take the pink section, they go, there better be some sugar on that page. There better be something that they want. If not, they're just going to turn to the next page. And if it says the name of your band, Sally Gilmore sings at the club, and therefore what you need is to get on the chariot of some other act. And I'm against the club owner who charges you to play there.
You know, there's the one club, we made last time maybe $40, each original band, even the headline.
How many people came into that club because of you?
Probably about 50 or 60.
60 people? And what was the tab?
How much per ticket? $5 or $6.
And the guy's got to make his? That's not bad. You did good. You done good.
That's right. Stay in this business.
Sir.
This isn't exactly a question. I've been wanting to thank you publicly for a long time for putting a linen napkin in front of me. And you did it on 2 occasions that whenever anybody says anything to me, I had a couple of people that I wanted to bring tonight. I was talking about coming here, people that were working as sound engineers in the business. And they said, oh, well, I heard Bill Graham's kind of a jerk, and I really think it was worth coming here. And I regret that I didn't just grab him by the balls and drag him here and say, you're gonna come anyway. But one of the first occasions where you did what I call the linen napkin was a few years ago. I went to a concert at Winterland where you had, I think it was Captain Beefheart and John McLaughlin on the same ticket. And I watched all these people jumping up and down and screaming in front of the speakers while Captain Beefheart performed certain acts with his guitar on the bass drum. And everybody was pretty wild and screaming and throwing frisbees around when McLaughlin came out in his cotton outfit and said, let's meditate for a second before we start. And I watched the magic. I was lucky to be in the balcony right in the middle in the front row. And I watched the magic as people were leaving saying, oh, what is this shit? And you brought that magic to those people with McLaughlin where I watched people stop in their tracks and turn around and wave to their friends, like, come on back, man. And when he got to the point in his first song where he had a break, I heard that place get absolutely, people applauded when they realized he was still playing. They shut up. It's like somebody threw a light switch. And I know that you created that environment, that space for that to happen. And that's something that has stuck with me for years. It's a magic moment in my life that I always remember as it's like the epitome of real music and real concert making. And that's one. And the other one was I saw you a few years ago at a thing that was put on in Berkeley called So You Want to Be in the Music Business. And they had various panels and all that. There were several hundred people at the auditorium in Berkeley. I remember you showed up and you kept apologizing because you kept bringing out your handkerchief and wiping your head and blowing your nose because you had the flu. And somebody made the comment that you still had a fever, you weren't supposed to be there. I remember you looked kind of pale and all that. And what was impressive was the energy that you had, just the passion you had for music was impressive enough that after you were done talking, we took a break, and you were supposed to leave and go home and go back to bed. And I remember coming back at the end of the break, and there were about 30 people had you cornered up against the wall, asking you questions. And some of them were berating you, like, whoa, such cards, my buddy got thrown out. But I was just, it really touched me. I was just totally impressed and found that I wanted to, somewhere along the line, contribute something as special as that. I mean, just to be there, the love for the music, and the love for you to stand there and continue asking the questions. I remember finally one of the people putting it on came in and grabbed you by the arm and said, come on. And once he grabbed your arm, you looked like you were going to pass out. But you stood there, and you didn't get on the guy's case, you didn't yell at people and say, leave me alone, I'm sick.
He was much bigger than I was.
Basically, that's a long-winded thank you for all of that.
Thank you. Very nice. Thanks.
Either perform or getting you to listen to someone's tape?
The tape you just send to the office, and I'll listen to it.
You listen to them personally, all the tapes that are
Yeah, but it's 25 minutes from my house to the office, and listen to tapes every day. I'm the only guy among women of the, I'd say 15 people who run the company. I'm the only person that does not have a car phone for that reason. Seriously.
Let's take one more, please. One more question from
I was a friend of mine to make it here tonight, but tell me if I didn't ask you. She's been in the electronics industry for about 12 years now, she's changing careers. I think it's fabulous promotion. She loves people love her, she's great at organizing. What opportunities are available to her so that she can get a taste for exactly what you do at a smaller level? You know what I mean?
Well, it's a good question. Who wouldn't, if you love music and you want to be part of that spirit, you want to be involved in it. And we have hundreds of people on file who say, I'll start down there. I'll start answering the phone and folding things into envelopes and putting things away if I could just be involved. I'll tell you, it is a problem because what they need is patience. You can possibly come in and you might be folding papers for a year because if somebody doesn't get promoted or dies or goes away, you're not going to move up. We've got a guy that's been in the mail department in our office for 7 years because nobody left and nobody moved. And finally, somebody at Shoreline, the head of security, moved on. We took the office guy and made him the security guy down there because he's been waiting for that. And we made able to move the guy out of the mail room. He's in the main room. He's out of the mail room. But it leads to a big problem that we have, and it's a change in the last few years. And the biggest challenge that we've had to the company, and it relates to, in some way, to what you said. 25 years ago, when we got started, and we started doing shows outside the Fillmore, and started taking the Dead into other cities, Santana and so on. The staff grew, but for a period of a good 10 years, 10, 12 years, everybody that came in had this love of the change of society and being involved with change and the freedom of expression and being involved in rock and roll and being involved with the community and being involved with the free shows in the parks and the various other activities that we get into. And their entire love affair, all of us, including myself, we all had a mistress. It was this, what we're talking about all night. It possessed all of us, including these guys. All of us, we lived for this music and for wanting to be a part of that scene. Then one by one, this guy met a young lady, this lady in the company met a guy, and some of that love, not the urge to do good, but some of that went, well, no, I'm not going to go to my 4th show tonight. I'm going to hang out with my girlfriend, or she's cooking, or he's whatever. And a few more years passed, and a couple of them had children. Others got married. Others got older. Got an old lady, got an old man moved in with. And little by little through the years, and I started to realize it maybe 8, 10 years ago. All of these people that gave 14, 16 hours a day, we're not down to 12 or 11. And all of a sudden, this guy who came to me, to the company, let's say, Peter Barsotti and Bob Barsotti, came out of Berkeley High School and started to work in the company. And 10 years later, Peter and Bedecker had 4 children. And Bob and his wife had 2 children. And they were still there, but they divided their love, and they divided their affection for life. There's the family, and there's work. And the company has had to expand because instead of getting 18 hours out of one guy, I got to get 18 hours out of 2 people. So the company has changed to a great extent, even though it's still run by the old timers, those of us that have been around 15, 20, 25 years. So there has been some room for new life and new people and new blood. And some of the new people are involved with the music. But that's gone. That the thought that we might possibly be involved with a new society on that level didn't quite work. We didn't have enough leaders. We had a lot of followers and not enough leaders. But it afforded us the chance to form the nucleus of our company. And it's still run by all of those people that started many years ago. In order for somebody to come into our company, it would be very difficult because we ain't going anywhere. We're going to be around for a long time, those that are in the company, and there may be some expansion. I decided a long, long time ago not to expand really beyond the Bay Area. We saved a building down in LA called the Wiltern Theater, which I think is a beautiful theater. A friend of mine us asked to help me, which we are. In 1982, when we came back from the Rolling Stones tour, I realized, I looked at the population growth and the topography and the layout in Northern California, and we realized then, if we didn't expand into South Bay and East Bay, other people would. That's why we built these amphitheaters. Those people were coming into San Francisco for shows. It was only a matter of time that somebody was going to build out there, and we decided that was going to be us, but not beyond the Bay Area. So that the company, I have no desire of having it grow beyond the Bay Area. I like to keep doing good work in the Bay Area. But if somebody wants to come into this business in the way you say your friend does, The price they're going to pay is time. How long are you going to stay there? And do you love music that much that you're willing to stay in the mailroom for 7 years? Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Bill.
Give me a bag.
Thanks very much. I'm going to give you a bag. It's a beautiful bag. Is this not a neat bag, a musical kind of thing? We're going to look at this together. I have not looked at this, but you all know how many awards Bill's been getting. They're all in that little booklet we're passing out. So we couldn't let it go by God, that we didn't give him something to put on his wall. So remember tonight. Can you read that? I don't remember that. What does it say?
In recognition of your involvement through the years, we've got some stash put away for, no. Bay Area Music Alliance, a division of Bay Area Women in Music, presents What About Us, a State of the Music Business Address by Bill Graham, June 4th, 1990, San Francisco Marriott, San Francisco, California. Cheers to 25 years.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, don't go anywhere now, guys. Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. Thank you, Bob Weir. Thank you, Marty Ballin. Thank you, Peter Alvin. Now, there's one more rock and roll artist here tonight who's going to play for us. We've got Greg Ken. He's going to play the happy birthday, happy anniversary cake for Bill. Please stick around, have some cake, have some coffee. Thank you, everybody who helped for tonight. It was a wonderful evening. We have, Bill, 25 years. We want to see you in 25 years for another one.
Sheila asked me to do a song tonight, and I didn't know, you know, because most of my songs aren't appropriate. What does a guy do at something like this? And I thought, there was one song that was written by one of the greats, Buddy Holly, and I think that it personifies not only Bill, but the whole Bay Area scene here and all the groups and the way we've hung in there year after year, and Marty and, you know, everybody here. I think this is the most appropriate song that I know. I'm sure there's more appropriate songs, but this is the one that I came up with. This is Not Fade Away. Why don't we all sing it together?
Yeah.
It's good cake cutting music, too. Well, I'm gonna tell you how it's gonna be. You're gonna give your love to me. Well, I'm gonna love you night and day. You know my love will not fade away. I say you know my love will not fade away. Well, my love bigger than a Cadillac, but I try to show it, you drive me back. Well, your love for me has got to be real before you know just how I feel. I said love real and not fade away. I said fade away, but not fade away, not fade away. Come on, not fade away, everybody. Not fade away, yeah. Not fade away, not fade away, not fade away, yeah. We won't fade away, not fade away, not fade away, not fade away. All right. Thank you, and thank you, Bill.
Exactly.
It's a great name.
My new name.
Naomi Weiss.
Well, I won't tell you why, but you can imagine.
I played you Still limited to some extent.
You got that?
Still limited.
Are the world's best pictures. They must make them downstairs.
Okay, now we need Phil in front of the ladies.
All right, okay.
Now.
Smile. Okay, one more.
Yes.
One more nice.
Okay. Oh, boy, are we
warning
famous.
shots are there?
Let's get them
I like
on.
it.
Yes.
Just keep looking at her.
Just keep looking.
What a party, Bill, huh?
All right.
Outrageous.
That's it? Is that right?
The Jewish woman would say me.
Yes. Bill, let's get one hug for you and me, darling.
All right.
Let's go get stoned.
Can I go?
Cheese.
Oh, my heart is weeping.
I'll not fade away. All right. Thank you, and thank you, Bill.